Hello everyone, and in tonight's video, I bring you 4 micropastas, this time with no real correlating theme like some of my other videos, but I assure you they are still all from the highest rated of all time on the Creepypasta website. Now, this may be my final micropasta video for quite a while, as I may move on to more full-length pastas in the near future, as well as possible book readings. All public domain, of course, for obvious reasons, but I have quite a few of them, and quite a few of them are classics. And I hope you enjoy them as much as I do. Yeah, I guess that's it. So, without further ado, I will bring you into tonight's stories, starting with The Third Wish by... Well, there doesn't actually seem to be any credit attributed to a writer, but it was published September 6th, 2008, with a rating of 8.83 out of 10 stars from 752 votes. An elderly man was sitting alone on a dark path. He wasn't sure of which direction to go, and he'd forgotten both where he was traveling to and who he was. He'd sat down for a moment to rest his weary legs, and suddenly looked up to see an elderly woman before him. She grinned toothlessly and with a cackle spoke. "Now your third wish? What will it be?" "Third wish?" The man was baffled. "How can it be a third wish if I haven't had a first and second wish?" "You've already had 2 wishes," the hag said. "But your second wish was for me to return everything to the way it was before you made your first wish. That's why you remember nothing, because everything is the way it was before you made any wishes." She cackled at the poor man. "So it is that you have 1 wish left." "All right," he said hesitantly. "I don't believe this, but there's no harm in trying. I wish to know who I am." "Funny," said the old woman as she granted his wish and disappeared forever. "That was your first wish." Now, I don't mean to kill the mood, but when I first read that story, I couldn't help myself but think of the classic cartoon sound effect. Wah wah. Now, this is, of course, a prehistoric creepypasta from the bygone age of 2008. That's 12 years ago, and no credit to an author of any kind. But, moving on from this story, we find ourselves in January 25th, 2009, with the message written by, uncredited. Again, with a rating of 8.83 stars out of 10 from 1.71 thousand votes. So, without further ado, don't dismiss this outright as the work of some raving lunatic. There's some sense to the story, if you'll just hear me out. Look, we all wonder if time travel is possible, right? Well, let me tell you something. It is. I'm from the future, actually. I know you probably don't believe that, but seriously, I'm from the future. It's a really great thing, getting to see the past, watching events unfold, stuff like that. We know more now than we ever would. Behind all the fun, though, there's a more serious aspect. We aren't supposed to go in our own lifetime, and we are never allowed to contact our past selves. Let me tell you, I'm breaking that rule right now. Yes, kid, you're talking to yourself. Your future self. I'm going to be executed for this. But you know what? I accept that. I'm preventing something by talking to you that is worse than death. I can't tell you outright what to do because the filters would catch it. This is the closest I can get. Trust me. I can, however, send a little message. You should probably read the first word of every paragraph. Now. Don't look behind you. Well, that's a odd little time travel story. Not exactly sure what to make of it myself. And of course, you know, due to the nature of reading this aloud, you wouldn't be able to see the paragraphs, so I had to improvise there a little bit. Now, don't look behind you. Kind of makes you feel like something's gonna get you. But he time traveled to... You know, I'm not gonna read too much into it. And we are moving on to what is the newest pasta in tonight's video. Stomping Grounds, published August 11th, 2013, by, and I hope I pronounce this right, and I hope it doesn't mean anything bad, Alapanamo. Now, this one is structured like a poem, but it also does not rhyme. So, I'm going to try to read this as well as I can. And without further ado, let's get into it. No one knew the secret spot where we as children played at night, The ashen moon, our only light, would greet us painted on the pond. The placid water, cool and black, would wash away the summer heat. The silty ground, cooler still, was soft and lumpy underfoot. Seaweed danced and grazed our legs. Below the surface as we trod, we stomped and splashed and swam and laughed, until we tried in the dark. But then one night, on way to pond, we spied unwelcomed guests afar. One shape was small, one shape was large, and large bent down by small, then made a quiet splashing sound, and walked away alone. We returned in light of day, a first for each of us, and there at last I gazed into the clouded waters where we played. To mind came a mantra terrible, which still echoes to this day. Seaweed doesn't grow in ponds. Seaweed doesn't grow in ponds. For we'd been treading children's heads, and laughed as hair tickled legs. All right, well, this one's kinda strange. Clearly, the lumpy ground was the heads and the seaweed was the hair. Though I'm not sure how you could not notice that for so long. Now, it does say at one part that is the first time they went to the pond in daylight. But it also says, oh no, wait. Yeah, they were at night. They were out at night the whole time. But still, it's a little odd you wouldn't notice that. My personal feelings aside, though, we are moving on to our final story tonight, and the longest of tonight, going back to the ancient days of 2008, October 13th, written by uncredited as well. The Kaleidoscope, with a rating of 8.81 out of 10 stars from 514 votes. And now to the story. While honeymooning in Maine, my wife and I stopped in the picturesque town of Booth Bay on a particularly dreary and rainy day. Since our planned picnic was out of the question, we sought shelter in a dilapidated little antique store near the harbor. My wife inspected the large chests and side tables near the door. I eagerly examined the antique tools and seafaring equipment inside the glass sales counter at the back. Being a collector of optics and mariner's equipments, I hoped to find a sextant, or perhaps an old leather-bound telescope. A particularly interesting piece caught my eye. It appeared to be a heavy brass flashlight, bearing a worn brown patina, but remarkably modern in design. I asked the shopkeeper but he could only tell me it was found in the same old sailor's chest as several of the compasses and sextants already on display. He inquired as to whether I would like to purchase it for $5, or perhaps have it for free. "It's worthless to me. Nobody wants it." When I remarked about the price, he sighed wearily, and then reached into the cabinet and retrieved it for me. "Here, see for yourself, feller." The craftsmanship was wonderful, quite durable, and apparently handmade, perhaps originating from somewhere in Europe. Worn lettering indicated it might be German, or perhaps Austrian in origin. I twisted the bulb housing, and a weak red beam swept out. Poking it into a dark corner of the shop, I was greeted with a fantastic monotone swirls, moving and entwining with each other just like a pit of eels. As I stared further into this unusual projector kaleidoscope, my fanciful mind invited ghoulish faces and sinuous, gnarled tendrils. Shutting the device off, I turned excitedly to the shopkeeper. "Fantastic," I said. "It must have an oil filter of sorts in those lenses." I have 2 Victorian kaleidoscopes, but none that are illuminated like this. "You don't get it, do you? Nobody gets it. They all come back to return it after a while." The shopkeeper leaned on the counter, and I could see he was breathing heavily and perspiring. "They all think it's some sort of trick, till they start seeing it when the light's off. That ain't no projection, mister. That thing, that light, it ain't making up those creatures. It's just letting your eyes see what's already there." Well, I gotta be quite honest with you, it feels almost more like the setup to a larger story than a story in and of itself. But I suppose it is what it is. And that is a quaint little prologue. But, yes. And, with all that, that's, all I have for you tonight in this video. So, with all that being said, I will, okay, so I don't have an outro yet. Bye. Oh dear.